Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 18 of the Abandoned Armoire Restoration Project. We've completed the bottom shelf. Now we're going to move on to the top. The top is actually covered with more slats, and there are several problems that we're going to have to overcome in making this top look a little bit better than it was. So, first, let's talk about the slats. They're basically just stacked up there. They were stapled. I am going to have to do some kind of a fastening because I don't know that glue is going to hold them good. Plus, setting them up there and gluing them up is going to be a little difficult. So I'm going to do probably some kind of a brad nail or something like that. But the immediate problem that I run into with these slats is this little curve here. As you can see, no matter how I place them, that third slat is going to have a gap right there. Now, this front is going to have some trim on it, so that's going to hide that. But from the inside, looking at the back, you can see that gap, an air gap. There was no trim or anything on the back. So I think I'm going to wind up putting some sort of a trim in the back. I'm going to replicate this curve and put something on the back to where it hides that gap. Now, the trim. This is the front piece. And as you recall, it was completely broken in half right there. I've glued that back up. That looks good. It's ready to go. But because I have done some planing to make all this wood look nice again, this trim piece is actually too long on both ends. So I'm going to have to cut off some on either end because it has to meet up here at the corner at a 45, essentially like that. So I have to be very careful that that meets up nice and flush so it makes a nice gapless connection. Also, back to the fact that I've done some planing and trimming and whatnot, the side piece is too long. That's going to be easy enough. I just have to cut off the back to meet the back. Now, let's talk about the back. There's a lot that I have to do or I want to do to it. Come here, buddy. This thing's getting heavier. So the top and the back is just this piece of wood that was centered and just, I think it had two screws holding it in. Fastening it's not going to be the problem. The problem is that's just too plain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on this slat look above this trim all the way to the top, essentially replacing this piece, which means, again, I have to replicate that curve from the front to the back and then put some slats in. And I've got a lot of slats left over because I made some extras when I was doing this slat back. We're going to have to do that. Back to these slats. There are many that are damaged. That's got a piece broken off. There's a whole bunch that have some of this small part here broken. So I'm probably going to have to make some new pieces. I'm sure there's going to be more issues that I'm going to find as I go through this, but that's my plan. So here we go on the top. 44 1/8. Twenty-two and a 16th. 46 and 7/8. Half of that is 23 and 7/16. There's my center. Right about there looks good. So I figure if I overlap trim over the front by about an inch, that gives me plenty glue up area, but it also gives me plenty of area to hide the top slats. So we measure an inch down. Okay, so I want to cut the 45s on the trim, but I'm going to use a test piece first to make sure I've got the angle exactly 45 degrees. So let me set the miter saw to 45 and make a cut. All right. Juggle these pieces so I can show you. So the line looks good, but is it really 45 degrees? Take a look. I don't know if this shows up on the camera, but there's a large air gap right there. Let's look at this angle a little closer. Square on it. No. Probably can't see it on the camera, but there is a large gap right there, which means if I force it to go to 90 degrees, see that gap right there? That tells us that I'm cutting greater than 45 degrees because it's on the inside. So let's reduce the angle and try again. Let's go to 44 and a half. Okay, using another piece of scrap, let's cut it at 44 and a half. And let's see what we got. Okay, so I measured it, and now it's less than what we need. 44 3/4. That did the trick. So let's cut it for real. There's the mark I made when it was screwed up on the top of the armoire. Extend that mark. I can see it at the top. Now I have to remember I have about a 1/8 inch kerf here. So I'm going to sneak up on it. I'm going to cut wide first, and I'm going to clamp it this time so it doesn't move. Right there. Okay. I think I'm getting a little close. That's pretty good. Let's see what we get. That's the line we want, and that's where we are. What's interesting is this wood must be not square, because we came right on the line at the top and then we're off on the bottom. So I'm going to sneak that bottom up a little bit more. That looks right on the line to me. Here we go. Okay, now since I marked it on the top, you can still see it because I took off the pencil mark with the cut, but it's right there on the edge. So we'll go ahead and put it back on the armoire, work on the side that goes up against this. I've got the top trim back on, so let's just take an initial look of the side trim. I haven't cut it yet or anything. Okay, right off the bat, see all that part overhang right there? That's because this is wider than the top trim. So we're gonna have to plane this down to get it to the same thickness so that it meets. So off to the planer. I planed it down a little bit and I went ahead and did the 45. And looky there, very nice. So now, since all of my planing and sanding and everything has made the armoire not as deep, I have to cut some off the length of this to make it match the end. So I'll go do that real quick, and then we can put this on and move on to the back. So as I wrap up this episode, let me tell you what I did off camera. I went ahead and put the trim up on the top, front, and both sides. It really worked out well. The corners are very tight. Everything is glued in, screwed in, and finished. The slats are going to hide behind this trim, just as I had planned. So now we go on to the back. Next episode, we're going to tackle the top back. I've got some table routing to show you. I've got some hand routing to show you. And I've got a major mistake made with a power tool that I'm going to have to figure out how to correct. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you next episode on the Abandoned Armoire Restoration Project. What you think, guys?